The weather was clear and beautiful in the early morning hours at Nuys Airport. It was 6:15 a.m. on a Thursday in late October, and the air smelled of jet fuel, money, and quiet authority. Captain Amara Williams stood beside the colorful glass doors of the executive terminal, watching the activity on the tarmac through her sunglasses. At 32, she had perfected the art of blending in. She wore a faded NASA flight jacket, a gift from her father, a retired aerospace engineer, a plain black t-shirt, and worn jeans. Her natural hair was pulled back into a neat bun. A small black handbag sat at her feet. To those watching her, she looked like a passenger. But she was unaware of what was about to happen. Everything was about to be turned upside down. She didn't look like the woman who had bought Apex Executive Aviation for $180 million 4 days earlier. Amara glanced at her watch, 06:18. Her assignment was scheduled for takeoff at 07. She had signed up as a reserve pilot, added to the roster at the last minute after the regular first pilot took sick leave. Gary Sutton, the chief pilot who had been with Apex for 12 years, was stunned by this request. "Ma'am, you don't need to fly as a reserve crew member," Gary had said on the phone 2 nights earlier. "You own the company now. You can observe from the jump seat," he said. "I want to see how the crew works when they think no one is watching," Amara had cut in. "I've heard rumors, Gary, especially about Captain Carmichael. I want to see for myself," she replied. Gary had been silent. Then, "Captain Carmichael, he's old-fashioned," he had continued. "Old-fashioned or old-troubled?" Amara asked. "Both," Gary admitted. There it was, anonymous, observing, testing. Through the window, he watched a gleaming white Bombardier Global 7500 pull up. His plane, one of 3 Globals in the Apex fleet, now the $75 million flagship of the company he controlled. The terminal doors opened. A man in his late 50s entered, exuding a confidence bordering on arrogance. He was tall, silver-haired, square-jawed, and possessed the distinctive bearing of someone who had commanded for decades. He wore a crisp white captain's uniform with 4 gold stripes on his shoulders, and carried a leather flight bag that looked older than some of the planes he flew. Captain Derek Carmichael. Amara had studied his file in detail. He had 35 years of flying experience. He started with regional airlines in the 90s, rose to Delta, flew 777s in the Pacific for 15 years, then retired early and joined the private charter world. His flight log was impressive, 22,000 hours, type ratings for every aircraft from Citations to 747s. His personal file, however, was not as impressive, 7 complaints in 3 years, all filed by female crew members or passengers, all dismissed on grounds of personality conflicts. 2 were quietly settled out of court. 1 involved a racist slur overheard by a ramp agent. Derek didn't notice Amara standing by the door. He walked past her toward the operations desk and slammed his bag down on it. "Good morning, Derek," said the young female dispatcher, Sarah, tensely. "Coffee," Derek said, "and tell me why I have a backup FO on my manifest." "Where's Jensen?" he asked. "Brad reported sick, Captain," Sarah said, reaching for the coffee machine. "Food poisoning. We had to call someone from the backup pool," she replied. "Him?" Derek asked. He looked at the iPad showing the crew list. His face darkened. "You're kidding," he said. "Captain Williams is fully qualified," Sarah said quickly. "He has a flight certificate for Global 7500 type aircraft, over 4,000 flight hours, and I don't care if he has 1,000,000 hours of flight time." Derek cut her off. "I'm not flying with strangers, and I'm definitely not flying with someone I haven't personally vetted. Call Jensen, tell him to get some Pepto and come to the plane." "In the ER," Sarah said quietly. "It's not just food poisoning. They think it's appendicitis." Derek looked at her. Then he slammed his palm on the counter, and Sarah flinched. "Unbelievable. Damn it, unbelievable. Do you know who today's client is? Victoria Ashford, the Queen of Silicon Valley. She doesn't fly commercial because she demands perfection. And you want me to come with some random woman I've never met?" he asked, his tone clear but firm. Amara had heard enough. She walked toward the operations desk, her steps determined. "Captain Carmichael," she said, her voice calm and professional. Derek turned. He looked her up and down. The NASA jacket, the jeans, the relaxed posture. His lips curled in barely concealed disdain. "Who are you?" Derek asked. "Captain Amara Williams," she said, extending her hand. "I'm your first officer on today's Aspen flight." Derek didn't take her hand. He looked at Sarah. "This is a joke, right? Dressed like she's going to a barbecue." "I dress comfortably for positioning legs," Amara said calmly, lowering her hand. "My uniform is in my bag. I'll change before the client boards the plane," she replied. "Positioning leg?" Derek laughed harshly. "Honey, this isn't a positioning leg. This is a revenue flight, an important customer. And you're not flying this flight." "I will according to the manifest," Amara said. Derek leaned in, his voice turning threatening. "Let me explain something to you, Captain Williams. I was flying before you were born. I don't care what the logbook says. I don't care which box you checked on the diversity application. I decide who sits in my cockpit. And you're not qualified for this job, he said, making his intentions crystal clear. What would you have done in Amara's place? Amara didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She had faced enemy MiGs in Air Force exercises. She had shot down an F-22 with one engine on fire. A bully in a pressed shirt wasn't going to intimidate her. Captain Carmichael, Amara said quietly, I've been assigned to this flight. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with the chief pilot. But we have a 07 departure and the client will be here in 15 minutes. I suggest we focus on pre-flight preparations. Pre-flight preparations? Derek's face flushed. Do you think I'll let you touch that plane? He replied. I think, Amara said, her voice hardening, that's exactly what will happen. Unless, of course, you want to explain to Ms. Ashford why her flight is delayed because you refuse to work with a qualified crew member. Derek took a step back, his chest heaving. He looked at Sarah. Get Gary Sutton on the phone. Now, he said. Sarah picked up the desk phone and dialed the number quickly. After a moment, it's going to voicemail, Captain. He's probably still in traffic, she replied. Then try the operations manager. If necessary, try the owner. I want someone with the authority to tell this woman she won't be flying my plane. Amara almost smiled. The owner, if only she knew. Captain Carmichael, Sarah said carefully. The owner just bought the company. No one has met him yet. He's scheduled to visit next week, she replied. Him? Derek spat. Of course she's a woman. That explains everything. The whole company is turning into a diversity circus. Amara felt the familiar cold anger settle in her chest. She had felt it in the Air Force when the instructors thought she would be kicked out of flight school. She had felt it when her pilot friends questioned whether she was ready for combat. She always felt it when someone saw her skin color or gender and thought she didn't belong here. But she had also learned to turn that anger into a weapon, to turn it into fuel. Captain, Amara said, pulling out her phone, I'm going to the plane to start the pre-flight check. You can join me or stay here and explain to Miss Ashford why her $40,000 rental plane is sitting on the ground. She turned and walked toward the exit door leading to the apron. Hey, Derek shouted, I didn't send you. Amara didn't stop. She pushed open the doors and stepped out into the bright California morning. Behind her, Derek stood, furious. Sarah looked horrified. Call security, Derek said. I want that woman off my plane. On the asphalt runway, Amara approached the Bombardier Global 7500. The sun reflected off its flawless white paint. As she walked toward the nose of the plane, she ran her hand along its fuselage. This wasn't just a plane. It was a $75 million engineering marvel, and Derek Carmichael considered it his. He reached the nose wheel and crouched down to inspect the supports and hydraulic lines. Everything looked clean. The ground crew had done a good job. He heard footsteps behind him. Fast, angry footsteps. Derek's voice echoed on the ramp. I told you to stay away from my plane. Amara stood up and turned around. Derek was walking toward her, his face purple with rage. Behind him, 2 security guards in yellow vests were running to catch up with him. This isn't your plane, Captain, Amara said calmly. It belongs to Apex Executive Aviation. I'm the captain, Derek growled, standing a meter away from her. That makes it mine, and I order you to leave the ramp immediately, he said. Things were escalating. On what grounds? Asked Amara. On the grounds that you pose a security risk, said Derek. I don't know you, I don't trust you, and I won't risk my license or my client by flying with someone I don't know. Amara lowered her head. Captain, have you checked my references? She asked. I don't need to review anything, Derek snapped. I can see everything I need to see just by looking at you, he replied. There it was. Plain as day. The mask had slipped. One of the security guards, an elderly black man named Thomas, cleared his throat. Captain Carmichael, ma'am, we need to resolve this issue before the customer arrives. There's no issue to resolve, Derek said. She's leaving. Now. Actually, Amara said, reaching into her coat pocket. I'm not leaving. She pulled out a leather ID card holder and opened it. Inside was an ID card bearing the ICAO logo, the International Civil Aviation Organization. ICAO Type Rating Inspector, Captain Amara Williams. Aircraft Bombardier Global 7500. Authority, Pilot Certification and Standards Inspection. Derek stared at the card. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. At this point, he couldn't change what had happened. I'm not just a pilot, Captain Carmichael, Amara said quietly. I'm the examiner who certifies pilots on this type of aircraft. That means I have the authority to evaluate your performance. And right now, you are failing spectacularly. Derek's face turned purple, then white. You're a Czech pilot? He asked. Correct, Amara said. And as an ICAO examiner, I am required to report pilots who make unsafe decisions, fail in crew resource management, or exhibit discriminatory behavior that jeopardizes flight safety, she replied. She approached him. Here's what's going to happen, Captain. You will walk back to the operations center. You will apologize to Sarah for your outburst. Then you will board this aircraft and fly this customer to Aspen with me. And if you utter another discriminatory word, I will permanently ground you." Derek clenched his jaw. "You can't ground me. You're not the FAA," he said. "No," Amara said, "but I can revoke your type rating for this aircraft. That means you can no longer fly Global jets. Apex only operates Global and Challenger jets, and you don't have a Challenger rating, which means you'll be out of a job." The security guards watched silently. This wasn't an argument anymore. This was a masterclass in authority. Derek looked at the plane, then at Amara, then at the terminal where Victoria Ashford's limousine had just pulled up. "Fine," Derek hissed, "but don't touch anything. Sit, watch, that's all." "We'll see," Amara said. Derek stormed back toward the terminal. Amara watched him go, then turned to security guard Thomas. "Thomas," she said, "do me a favor, keep your radio on. If Captain Carmichael wants to take me off the plane again, I want you to call the tower and say there's a crew dispute that's putting safety at risk. What do you think the pilot will do?" Thomas looked stunned. "Ma'am, are you sure? This is a serious call," he asked. "I know," said Amara, "but I feel Captain Carmichael is about to make a very serious mistake." She climbed the air stairs onto the plane. The cabin was immaculate. Cream leather, gold accents, a fully equipped galley, and 12 passenger seats arranged in a layout that reflected luxury. Amara walked toward the cockpit. She sat in the right seat, the first pilot's seat, and began mentally reviewing the pre-flight checklist. She didn't need the checklist. She had flown this plane 300 times. She had written the training manuals for it. She knew every system, every quirk, every emergency procedure. But more importantly, she knew exactly what was going to happen. Derek Carmichael would not back down. His ego wouldn't allow it. And when he pushed too hard, Amara would respond with the full weight of the Federal Aviation Authority and $180 million in capital. Outside, Victoria Ashford stepped out of the limousine, her assistant walking behind her with the luggage. In the cockpit, Amara activated the flight management system. The battle had only just begun, and Derek Carmichael was unaware that he had already lost. Victoria Ashford was the kind of woman who commanded attention simply by being present. At 52, she had spent 30 years in Silicon Valley, not as a founder, but as a founder's wife. Her husband, Gerald Ashford, had sold his cloud computing company for $2.3 billion in 2019. Victoria had transformed that into a venture capital portfolio, a lifestyle brand, and an Instagram following of 800,000. These followers believed they too could board private jets wearing $15,000 Brunello Cucinelli cashmere. She stepped onto the tarmac at Van Nuys Airport wearing cream-colored wide-leg pants, a silk blouse, and sunglasses more expensive than most people's monthly rent. Her assistant, a tense young man named Trevor, struggled behind her with a Rimowa suitcase and 2 Louis Vuitton handbags. "Trevor, for God's sake, drag it," Victoria said sharply without looking back. "That suitcase costs more than your car." "Yes, Ms. Ashford," Trevor muttered. Victoria approached the Bombardier Global 7500 with the experienced eye of someone who had been flying private for years. She immediately sensed something was wrong. There was tension on the ramp. Security guards were waiting beside the plane. Captain Derek Carmichael, a man she had flown with and approved of before, stood by the air stairs talking in a low, heated voice with a woman in a NASA jacket. Victoria slowed her approach. Her curiosity piqued. "Is there a problem?" Victoria called out, her voice sharp. Derek turned, his face still flushed. He immediately shifted his expression to something close to professionalism. "Good morning, Ms. Ashford. No problem at all. Just a minor crew issue. We'll be on time." Victoria looked at the woman in the NASA jacket behind him. She was younger, in her early 30s, black, athletic, calm. She didn't look like ground crew. She looked calm, confident, relaxed. "Who is she?" Victoria asked, pointing with her manicured finger. "The backup first officer," Derek said indifferently. "She?" "Captain Amara Williams," the woman interrupted, stepping forward and extending her hand. "I'll be flying with Captain Carmichael today." Victoria raised her eyebrows. She shook Amara's hand briefly, assessing her as she would assess venture capitalists' investment proposals. Quick, ruthless, decisive. "You're the assistant captain?" Victoria asked. "Where's Brad?" "Medical emergency," Amara said. "Appendicitis. I came in for him." Victoria looked at Derek. "Have you flown with him before?" "No," Derek said quickly. "That's the problem. I prefer to fly with crew I know. It's a safety issue." "A safety issue." Amara's voice was calm but sharp. "Captain Carmichael, I have over 4,000 flight hours, 800 of them specifically on this aircraft type. I'm also an ICAO Type Rating Examiner for the Global 7500. I've certified pilots to fly this aircraft. I think I can handle monitoring the flight." Victoria glanced between the two, sensing the subtext, but not fully understanding it. The only thing she understood was time. And this was a waste of time. "Captain Carmichael," Victoria said, her tone leaving no room for debate, "I have a dinner meeting in Aspen at 7. I need to be airborne in 10 minutes. If he's qualified, he flies. If not, fire him and find someone else. But decide now." Derek's jaw tightened. He looked at Amara with pure hatred. "He'll fly. But if there's a problem, there won't be any problems, said Amara, unless you cause one. Victoria didn't understand what that meant, but she was satisfied. Fine. Trevor, load the bags. I want my espresso ready before the plane takes off. Without another glance, she climbed the air stairs. Trevor scrambled after her, struggling with the luggage. Derek approached Amara and whispered in a low voice, "You think you've won, but the moment we take off, you'll sit there quietly. You won't touch the control panel. You won't make suggestions. You'll be there to take notes. That's all." "We'll see," Amara said again. He followed her up the stairs. Inside the cabin, Victoria sat down in one of the large leather seats at the front and immediately pulled out her iPad to check her emails. Trevor sat down in a seat further back and tried to make himself invisible. Amara walked past them toward the cockpit. She could feel Victoria's eyes on her back, assessing her, judging her, recording her impressions. In the cockpit, Derek sat in the left seat, the captain's seat, aggressively going over the pre-takeoff checklist as if speed equaled competence. Amara sat in the right seat and put on her headset. She began her own instrument checks, noting fuel load, weight and balance, and weather data. "I already did the checks," Derek said sharply. "I know," Amara replied. "Are you questioning my competence?" Derek's voice rose. "I'm following standard procedure," Amara replied. "Cross-checking. You should welcome that." Derek muttered something like typical, but didn't elaborate. Amara opened the flight plan in the FMS, from Van Nuys to Aspen Pitkin County Airport. 630 nautical miles. Flight time approximately 1 hour 45 minutes. The route stretched over the Mojave Desert, across Nevada, and into the Colorado Rockies. Aspen was one of the most challenging airports in the United States. Elevation 7,820 feet, surrounded by mountains. Short runway. Unpredictable winds. It required specialized crew training and mountain flying experience. "You're qualified for Aspen approaches, right?" Derek asked, his tone clearly skeptical. "Yes," Amara replied. "I've flown into AAC 73 times, including December snow and summer convective weather conditions." Derek grunted. "We'll see how you handle the approach." Amara didn't respond. She finished her checks and reached for the radio. "Van Nuys ground, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, ready for taxi with Bravo information." Tower responded immediately. "Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, Van Nuys ground, taxi to runway 16R via Alpha Bravo. Hold on runway 16R, Alpha, taxi to 16R via Bravo. Keep it short, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray," Amara acknowledged. Derek shot her a look. "I'll handle the radios." "You're flying," Amara said. "I'm communicating. That's standard CRM." "I don't care about CRM," Derek snapped. "I care about my plane." "It's not your plane," Amara said quietly. Derek's hands tightened on the control column. "What did you say?" Before Amara could respond, Victoria's voice crackled over the cabin intercom. "Captain, are we moving or having a meeting?" Derek released the parking brake and pushed forward on the throttle. The Global 7500 began to move, its twin Rolls-Royce engines purring with 18,000 pounds of thrust each. While taxiing, Amara reviewed the takeoff briefing. "Runway 16 right, 11,000 feet available. V1 1222, turn 1 to 31, V2 141. Takeoff Ocean 3, initial climb 6,000, then as assigned. Rejection criteria below V1 are any malfunction, fire, unsafe condition. Above V1 we fly unless we can't. Agreed?" Derek didn't respond. "Captain, I need verbal confirmation of the briefing," Amara said. "Okay, understood." "Whatever," Derek muttered. They reached the holding line. While Amara completed the pre-takeoff checklist, Derek held the brakes. Everything was fine. Everything was ready. Van Nuys Tower, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, ready for takeoff, 16 right. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, Van Nuys Tower, wind 1708, runway 16 right, clear for takeoff. Ready for takeoff, 16 right. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray. Derek taxied onto the runway, nose aligned with the center line. He didn't wait. He didn't stop. He pushed the throttle forward to reach takeoff power. The engines roared. The plane shot forward, the acceleration pressing them into their seats. "Thrust adjusted," Amara shouted, scanning the engine gauges. Derek's hands were tense on the control column, his eyes locked forward. 100 knots, Amara announced. The runway markings blurred by. The airspeed needle climbed. V1. Derek didn't respond. He was supposed to say turn at 131 knots, but he remained silent. "Turn," Amara shouted at 131 knots. Derek pulled back on the control column. The nose lifted. The main wheels left the ground. They were airborne. "Positive speed," Amara said, watching the vertical speed indicator climb. Retract the wheels, Derek said. Amara raised the landing gear lever. 3 green lights went out, replaced by 3 red transition lights. Then no lights remained as the landing gear retracted into the fuselage. Landing gear up, 3 red, 3 out, Amara confirmed. Derek said nothing. They climbed to 3,000 feet. Los Angeles spread out below, the Pacific Ocean glistening to the west. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray. Contact departure 124.9, said the tower. 249, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, Amara replied. She changed frequencies. SoCal takeoff. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, climbing from 3,000 meters to 6,000 meters. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, SoCal takeoff. Radar contact. Climb and maintain flight level 280. Climb to a higher level in 10 miles. Climb to flight level 280. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray. Amara adjusted the autopilot's altitude selector. The plane climbed smoothly and ascended to 28,000 feet. Derek engaged the autopilot and leaned back, finally relaxing a little. See? No drama. You didn't have to do anything. I used the radios, confirmed the speeds, monitored the systems, and supported you, Amara said. That's the first pilot's job. You could have stayed at the terminal, Derek muttered. They climbed silently. The California desert disappeared beneath them. Brown, endless, empty. Ahead, the first hints of the Nevada mountains appeared on the horizon. At 28,000 feet, they leveled the plane. The flight was smooth. The autopilot kept the plane perfectly on course. Finally, Derek said, exhaling. Peace and quiet. Inside the cabin, Victoria sipped her espresso while scrolling through Instagram, sharing a photo of the view outside the window with the note, heading to Aspen. The only way to fly is by private jet. Jet life. Executive travel. Trevor sat tensely in the back, hoping the flight would go smoothly. But in the cockpit, Amara was monitoring the weather radar. Red and yellow echoes formed a line east of Nevada. A storm. Not huge, but significant. Convective activity. Turbulence. Possible icing. Captain, Amara said, we'll need to deviate from our route to avoid these weather conditions. Derek glanced at the radar. No problem. We'll fly right through it. Fly right through it. Amara looked at him. That's a line of thunderstorms. We need to request a southbound vector. I've flown through worse, Derek said dismissively. We're not delaying this flight because you're a little scared of rain. I'm not scared, Amara said. I'm cautious. There's a difference. There's a difference between being cautious and being cowardly, Derek replied. I'm the captain. We're going straight through. Amara felt her jaw tighten. This wasn't about the weather anymore. Derek was trying to prove something. That he was the one in charge. That Amara didn't matter. SoCal, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, requesting a deviation from the route due to weather conditions, Amara said into the radio. Negative, Derek yelled, reaching over and pulling Amara's headset jack out of the sound panel. Amara's headset went silent. She looked at him. What are you doing? I'm the captain, Derek said. I handle ATC. You sit there and shut your mouth. This is a crew resource management error, Amara said coldly. You just isolated yourself from your first officer. That's how planes crash. We won't crash, Derek said. We'll fly through some clouds and land in Aspen. Then you'll get off my plane and I'll never see you again. Amara plugged her headset back into the panel. Captain, this isn't safe. I recommend we deviate from the route. Recommendation noted and denied, Derek said. They flew into the weather. At first, there was a slight shake. Small jolts, nothing serious. But then it got worse. The plane began to shake. Rain was hitting the windshield. Lightning flashed in the distance. Inside the cabin, Victoria gripped the armrest. What is this? Trevor looked terrified. In the cockpit, the turbulence intensified. The plane shook violently. The autopilot was struggling to maintain altitude. Captain, we need to get out of these weather conditions immediately, said Amara, her voice urgent but controlled. We're almost through, insisted Derek, gripping the control stick tighter. There was a huge jolt. The plane dropped 200 feet in 2 seconds. Amara felt sick. The fasten seatbelt sign is on, Derek announced over the intercom, his voice tense. Another jolt. This time the plane rolled 15 degrees to the left before Derek could correct it. Enough, Amara said. I'm requesting a diversion. You're not doing that, Derek yelled. Amara reached for the radio. Derek pushed her hand away. Touch that radio again and I'll have you arrested when we land, Derek growled. Amara looked at him. This was crossing the line. This wasn't just discrimination or ego anymore. This was putting the plane in danger. She pulled out her phone. What are you doing? Derek asked. I'm calling the tower directly, Amara said. She dialed the Van Nuys operations number. It was a line that connected directly to the dispatch center, which could relay messages to ATC. You can't do that, Derek shouted. The phone rang once, twice. Apex Operations Center, a voice answered. This is Captain Amara Williams, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, Amara said calmly. I need you to contact SoCal departure immediately. We're in severe turbulence and need to divert south immediately. The pilot in command is refusing to divert. Roger that, Captain Williams. I'm relaying now. Derek's face turned from red to purple. You just flew over me. Just now, the radio crackled. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, SoCal departure here. We received a transmission from your operations center. Are you requesting a deviation from the route due to weather conditions? Before Derek could respond, Amara touched the microphone. Affirmative, SoCal. We request an immediate turn right to course 120 to avoid weather conditions. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, turn right to course 120, descend and maintain flight level 240. Right 120, descend to flight level 240. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray. Amara disengaged the autopilot and manually turned the plane onto the new course. The flight stabilized immediately once they were out of the weather. Derek froze and stared at her. You just took control of my plane. I took control of an unsafe situation, Amara corrected. You were putting the passengers, the crew, and the aircraft in danger. That's sufficient reason to immediately relinquish command. You can't relieve me of my duties, Derek shouted. I'm the captain. I'm also an ICAO inspector, Amara said. That means I'm your superior. And right now, Captain Carmichael, you've failed your control flight. Derek's mouth opened and closed. He looked like a fish trying to breathe. What are you talking about? Amara pulled a tablet from her flight bag. She opened a file. Every ICAO Type Rating Inspector has the authority to conduct unannounced competency checks, Amara said. It's part of our inspection duties. And Captain Carmichael, you just demonstrated gross negligence, crew resource management failure, and unsafe decision-making. She showed him the tablet. On the screen was a partially filled-out official ICAO evaluation form. Pilot evaluated. Derek Carmichael. Evaluator. Amara Williams. Status. Inadequate. Derek looked at the screen. This is a trap. You set me up. No, said Amara. You exposed yourself. I merely observed. The radio crackled again. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray. Altimeter 2987. Contact Denver Center 135.65. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray. Amara switched frequencies smoothly, as if she hadn't just ruined a man's career. Inside the cabin, Victoria had taken out her phone. She had recorded the entire turbulence incident. She was furious. She pressed the cockpit call button. Derek, still in shock, answered. Yes, Ms. Ashford? What was that? Victoria's voice was ice cold. Did you fly us into the storm? Are you trying to kill me? It was just a little turbulence, stammered Derek. Little? Victoria shouted. My $3,000 espresso machine fell. Trevor is hyperventilating in here. I want an answer. Now. Amara pressed her microphone. Ms. Ashford, this is Captain Williams. We encountered unexpected weather. We diverted from our route and are now flying smoothly. We'll be in Aspen in 45 minutes. Who are you? Victoria asked. The co-pilot. The person Captain Carmichael didn't want flying today. There was a silence. Then the person he said wasn't qualified? Correct, said Amara. Another silence. Captain Carmichael, when we land, you and I are going to have a talk. Derek didn't answer. He couldn't. He was staring at the tablet showing his failed evaluation. Amara put the tablet back in her bag and continued flying the plane. The Colorado mountains rose ahead of them, the Rocky Mountains glistening white with early snow. Here's what will happen, Amara said quietly. We'll land in Aspen. You'll take a taxi to the FBO. Then you'll gather your things and get off the plane. Your type rating for the Global 7500 will be suspended until a full review is conducted. You'll receive official notification within 48 hours. Derek finally found his voice. You can't do this. I'll sue. You won't do anything, Amara said. Because if you fight this, I'll release the cockpit voice recording. Every word you said. Every decision you made. And then not only your type rating, but your entire license will be revoked. He looked at her. You were given a chance, Captain. More than one chance. You chose your ego over safety. That is unforgivable. Derek slumped into his seat. He looked 10 years older. Ahead of them, the peaks of the Rocky Mountains filled the windshield, and Amara Williams, owner of Apex Executive Aviation and former F-22 pilot, flew them toward Aspen with the precision and calm of someone who had won the war without firing a single shot. The reckoning was approaching. And Derek Carmichael was about to learn that altitude meant nothing when you fell. Aspen-Pitkin County Airport was located in a valley surrounded by mountains reaching 14,000 feet, at an elevation of 7,820 feet above sea level. The runway was short, 8,006 feet, and ended abruptly at the edge of a cliff. The approach required precise flying, especially in the thin air at high altitude where engines produced less power and wings generated less lift. This airport was one that separated competent pilots from excellent ones, and Derek Carmichael was about to discover he was neither. Denver Center, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, descending from flight level 230 for Aspen, Amara said into the radio. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, Denver Center, Aspen Tower 124.6, altimeter 2998, Aspen Tower 246, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray. Amara changed frequencies. Aspen Tower, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, descending from 1200 to 7000. Information Golf, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, Aspen Tower, good day. Wind 330, speed 12, wind gusts 20. Runway 33 in use, report El Indios intersection. El Indios, runway 33, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray. Amara looked at Derek. He had been silent for 20 minutes, staring blankly at the instrument panel. His hands rested loosely on the control column. His face had turned from purple rage to a pale defeat. "Captain," Amara said, "you need to do the approach briefing." Derek didn't respond. "Captain Carmichael," Amara repeated, her voice sharper. "We're 6 minutes from El Indios. You need to do the approach briefing." Derek finally looked at her. His eyes were vacant. "You're the examiner. You do the briefing." Amara felt something, not sympathy, but recognition. She had seen that look before, in the Air Force when pilots got kicked out of flight school. The moment they realized their dreams were over, it was the look of utter, crushing defeat. But there was no time for sympathy now. There was a plane to land. "Fine," Amara said. "I'll give the briefing, but you'll do the approach. I'll watch." "I'm not flying anything," Derek muttered. "You're the one who wants control. You do it." Amara's jaw tightened. This was dangerous. A captain losing mental control while approaching one of North America's most challenging airports was an invitation to disaster. "Captain Carmichael," Amara said, her voice dropping to the commanding tone she'd learned in the military. "You are the pilot in command. I don't care what happened before. Right now we have a passenger in the back, a $75 million plane and a runway surrounded by mountains. You are flying this approach. Understood?" Derek looked at her. For a moment something flashed in his eyes, perhaps anger, perhaps wounded pride, but then it vanished. He slowly shook his head. "Understood," he said. "Good," said Amara. She opened the approach chart on the multifunction display. "We have clearance for an RNAV GPS 33 approach. The first approach fix is Lindsay at 14,000 feet. We'll descend to 10,600 at Hitch, then to 9,004 at Crep. The final approach fix is Limble at 3.4 miles from the threshold at 8,400 feet. The decision height is 7,900 feet. If we miss the approach, we'll turn right and climb to 14,000 and hold at Lindsay as published." He looked at Derek. "The runway is 8,600 feet long. There will be a 12-knot headwind and 20-knot wind gusts. Thin air, short runway, mountains on both sides. This requires precision. We can't afford to make mistakes." Derek nodded mechanically. "Understood." "Approach speeds," Amara continued. "Final approach speed is VREF plus 5 gusts. That's 132 knots. Threshold speed is 127. Land within the first 2,000 feet. Automatic brakes at maximum. Engage reverse thrust immediately. If there's any sign we won't make the numbers, we go around." "Agreed?" "Agreed," said Derek. Amara studied him. He looked alert, but barely. She did a mental calculation. If he showed even the slightest hesitation on approach, she would take control. She wouldn't let pride or protocol kill them. "Lindsay in 1 minute," Amara announced. She prepared the plane. The landing gear was lowered. The flaps were set for approach. The speed sensors were adjusted. Everything was green. Mountains rose on either side, their snow-capped peaks glistening in the afternoon sun. The valley narrowed. The runway appeared ahead, a thin strip of asphalt carved into the mountainside. "Lindsay," Amara called out. "Aspen Tower, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray. Lindsay is approaching. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, Aspen Tower, cleared to land on runway 33. Wind 330, speed 14, wind speed 22. Permission granted to land on 33, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray." Derek's hands gripped the control column. The autopilot was disengaged. He was now flying manually. The aircraft descended smoothly, following the GPS glide path. 1,000 feet up, Amara called out. The aircraft passed 9,000 feet. The runway was clear ahead, but the winds were turbulent and shaking the aircraft. 500 feet. Derek's flight was adequate. It wasn't perfect, but it was adequate. The airspeed fluctuated slightly. 128, 131, 134, but it was within acceptable limits. 200 up. The ground was approaching rapidly. Mountains flanked both sides. The runway threshold was rapidly approaching. 100 feet up, decision altitude, Amara announced. "Runway in sight, proceed." Derek's eyes were fixed on the runway. His jaw was clenched. The plane crossed the threshold at exactly 127 knots. 50 feet, Amara called out. 30, 20, 10. The main wheels hit the ground with a loud thud. It wasn't graceful, but it was safe. Derek immediately engaged the thrust reversers, their noise filling the cockpit. The automatic brakes kicked in, pushing them back into their seat belts. The runway markers passed quickly. 7,000 feet remaining. 6,000. The plane slowed steadily. 60 knots, Amara called out. Derek released the reversers and engaged the manual brakes. The plane came to a smooth stop with 2,000 feet of runway remaining. Aspen Tower, Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, out of 33. Global 7500 Alpha X-ray, turn left onto the next taxiway. Contact Ground Control 9. As Amara changed frequencies, Derek slowly taxied toward the FBO terminal. Inside the cabin, Victoria Ashford sat stiffly in her seat, her fingers white. She had felt every jolt, every gust of wind. Trevor looked like he was going to be sick. The plane came to a stop on the ramp. Derek shut down the engines. The sudden silence was deafening. Amara removed her headset. "That was an acceptable approach, Captain. Your flight was within standards." Derek didn't respond. He was still staring at the instrument panel, his hands gripping the control column. "But your earlier decision," Amara continued, "was unacceptable, and your behavior toward me since we met is sufficient grounds for immediate termination." She took out her tablet again and opened another file. "I'm not just an ICAO inspector, Captain Carmichael. I'm also the owner of Apex Executive Aviation. I bought the company 4 days ago." Derek turned his head toward her. "What? This plane is mine. This company is mine. And your contract is mine." Derek stared at her, opening and closing his mouth. "I planned to be the backup pilot," Amara said, "because I'd heard rumors about you. About how you treat women. About how you treat minority pilots. About how you refuse to follow CRM protocols. I wanted to see it with my own eyes." She closed the tablet. "You exceeded my worst expectations." Derek finally found his voice. You set me up." "No," said Amara. "I gave you an opportunity. You could have acted professionally. You could have shown me basic respect. You could have followed safety protocols. You chose not to." He unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. "Your employment with Apex is terminated, effective immediately. Your type certificate is suspended pending the outcome of the FAA investigation. Furthermore, I will be filing a formal complaint with the NTSB for deliberately endangering passengers by entering severe weather after receiving a deviation advisory." Derek's face registered shock, anger, disbelief, helplessness. "You can't do this," he said, his voice trembling. "I've been flying for 35 years. This is all I have." "I've been flying for 10 years, Amara said. "But in those 10 years, I never endangered passengers because of my ego. I never ignored my crew's advice, and I never judged anyone's competence based on the color of their skin." He picked up his flight bag. "You can pack your things and leave the plane. Security will escort you to the terminal. Your final paycheck will be mailed to your registered address." Derek slowly, unsteadily stood up. "Amara, Captain Williams, please. I made mistakes, but don't take my career away. I can change. I can do it." "You had 35 years to change," Amara said. "You didn't. You won't." She pushed him aside and entered the cabin. Victoria Ashford was already standing, phone in hand. Her face was flushed with anger. "Captain Williams," Victoria said, her voice tense, "I need to speak with you immediately." "Of course, Ms. Ashford," Amara said calmly. Victoria moved away from Trevor and gestured toward the front of the cabin. Her voice was lowered, but her anger was palpable. "I was terrified for 45 minutes because your captain flew us into the storm," hissed Victoria. "I filmed it. I filmed my espresso machine flying around the cabin. I also filmed Trevor crying. And if I don't get an answer right now, I'm going to post these on social media." Amara nodded. "You deserve answers, Ms. Ashford, and I will give them to you. But first, let me ask you this. After we avoided the weather, did you feel safe?" Victoria paused. "Yes, the flight stabilized. Because I took control," Amara said. "Captain Carmichael refused to deviate from the route. I overrode him, contacted ATC directly, and we got out of the weather. I probably saved your life." Victoria blinked. "You overrode the captain." "I'm an ICAO Type Rating Examiner," Amara said. "I have the authority to remove a captain who makes unsafe decisions. That's exactly what I did." She pulled out her tablet and showed Victoria the evaluation form. Victoria read the form and her eyes widened. "You failed him. He failed himself," said Amara. "And Ms. Ashford, I should tell you something else. I own this company. I'm not just the first officer. I own Apex Executive Aviation." Victoria looked at her. You own it?" "Yes," said Amara. "I bought the company 4 days ago because I love aviation, and I wanted to eliminate exactly this kind of behavior." Victoria was silent for a long time. Then she put down her phone. "So you're telling me that racist jerk tried to keep you off your own plane?" "Exactly," said Amara. The expression on Victoria's face shifted from anger to something else. Perhaps respect. Perhaps schadenfreude. "Oh my God. That's the strongest move I've seen in Silicon Valley." She looked toward the cockpit where Derek was slowly gathering his things. "He got fired?" "He got fired 5 minutes ago," Amara confirmed. Victoria smiled coldly, smugly. "Good. I'll still post the video, but I'll frame it differently. Incompetent captain nearly kills passengers. Tough female owner saves the day. You'll be famous." "I'd rather not," said Amara. "Too late," said Victoria, already typing on her phone. "This is gold. My followers will love it." Before Amara could stop her, she pressed the post button. Within seconds, the video began to spread. Victoria Ashford's 800,000 Instagram followers saw the turbulence. They saw the horror. And they saw Victoria's post. Today we almost died, because the pilot's ego was bigger than his brain. Thankfully, the real captain, the smart black woman who owns the airline, saved us. That's leadership. Women in aviation. Karma is real. Apex Aviation. The comments started pouring in. Oh my God, who is this woman? That pilot should be in jail. The airline's owner? Legend. I'll never fly commercial again. How do I get a ticket from Apex? Amara closed her eyes. This was going to be a bigger deal than she had anticipated. Behind her, Derek emerged from the cockpit. He looked devastated. His uniform was wrinkled, his face haggard. He wasn't looking anyone in the eye. Captain Carmichael, Amara said formally. Security is waiting to take you to the terminal. 2 security guards in Apex uniforms boarded the plane. Derek, flight bag slung over his shoulder, passed silently by Amara. When he reached the door, he stopped. He turned back. You ruined me, Derek said quietly. No, Amara said. You ruined yourself. I just refused to protect you. Derek's shoulders slumped. He descended the stairs and disappeared beyond the ramp. Victoria watched him go, then turned to Amara. You know what? I'm changing my return flight to Los Angeles. I want to fly with you again. I want to tell everyone I flew with the woman who took down that bastard. Amara smiled slightly. I'd be honored, Ms. Ashford. Trevor, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. That was the most intense flight of my life. It was also the coolest. Amara laughed, a hearty and relaxed laugh. Welcome to aviation, Trevor. As the passengers disembarked, Amara returned to the cockpit. She sat in the captain's seat, the left seat, and looked out at the mountains. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from Chief Pilot Gary Sutton. Amara, what happened? Derek's lawyer already called. You're trending on Twitter. Amara replied. Long story. I'll tell you tomorrow. But Derek's done. Permanently. Another message arrived. This time from an unknown number. Captain Williams, this is the FAA Flight Standards District Office. We've received numerous reports today regarding N7500AX. Please call us immediately. Amara sighed. The investigation was beginning. But sitting in the cockpit of the plane she owned, surrounded by the mountains she loved, having ended the career of a man who had terrorized others for decades, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. She had won. Not through aggression, not through revenge, but through competence, authority, and a firm refusal to accept discrimination as normal. Derek Carmichael thought he was untouchable. At 28,000 feet, he learned otherwise, and now the whole world was watching. The impact was immediate, intense, and global. 3 hours after Victoria Ashford posted the video, it had been viewed 4.2 million times. By midnight, it had been viewed 12 million times. The next morning, it was trending on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. News channels reported on it, aviation blogs analyzed the video frame by frame, and Derek Carmichael's name became synonymous with all the flaws of the old aviation culture. Amara Williams sat in her hotel room at the St. Regis Aspen, watching her phone flood with notifications, interview requests from CNN, MSNBC, Forbes, Business Insider, messages from pilot associations, women's aviation groups, and civil rights organizations, and plenty of hate mail from men who saw her as a threat to the natural order. But the most important notification came the next morning at 8 a.m. FAA Flight Standards District Office, official investigation, subject incident report, N7. Captain Williams, pursuant to 14 CFR Part 121, you are required to provide a sworn statement regarding the incidents involving aircraft N7500AX on October 24. An official investigation has been initiated. Please contact Inspector Michael Torres at the number below within 24 hours. Amara called immediately. Inspector Torres, a stern voice answered. This is Captain Amara Williams. I received your notice. Captain Williams, Torres's voice softened slightly. Thank you for calling immediately. I am the lead investigator on this case. We have received numerous reports from you, the passenger, and Captain Carmichael's attorney. We need your statement. I'll be happy to cooperate, Amara said. What do you need? Everything, Torres said. From the moment you arrived in Van Nuys to the moment you landed in Aspen, I already have the cockpit voice recorder data and the ATC logs. But I need your perspective. Can you come to our Denver office tomorrow? I'll be there, Amara said. Good, said Torres. And Captain Williams, off the record? Yes? I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen a lot of cowboys. I've seen a lot of egos. But what you did yesterday, taking control of an unsafe situation, documenting everything, protecting your passengers, that's classic piloting. Whatever happens to Carmichael, you did the right thing. Amara felt the tightness in her chest ease. Thank you, Inspector. That means a lot to me. We'll meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. Amara ended the call and immediately messaged Chief Pilot Gary Sutton. The FAA wants a statement. I'm flying to Denver tomorrow. We need to discuss Carmichael's replacement and our media strategy. This is turning into a bigger deal than I anticipated. Gary's reply came instantly. I'm already on it. I have 3 qualified Global 7500 captains ready for the meeting. And Amara? You're a hero. Don't let anyone say otherwise. Amara smiled. Then she opened her laptop and began drafting the official statement for the FAA. For 2 hours she detailed every conversation, every decision, every security breach. When she finished, she had produced a 15-page, very heavy document. Derek Carmichael's career wasn't just over. It was being autopsied in real time. 300 miles away, in a cramped apartment in Burbank, California, Derek Carmichael sat in the dark staring at his phone. In less than 24 hours he had been fired, humiliated and ruined. His phone kept ringing. Journalists, former colleagues, his ex-wife, all wanting to know if the rumors were true. He ignored them all, but he couldn't ignore his lawyer, Martin Kellerman, a lawyer specializing in wrongful termination cases. Derek, I've reviewed everything, Kellerman said on the phone, his voice tense. The video, the cockpit voice recorder transcript, the ATC logs. I'll be blunt, it's bad. How bad? Derek asked, his voice strained. Bad enough to end your career, Kellerman said. The CVR shows you refused to deviate from the route due to weather conditions. You physically obstructed the first pilot's radio communication. You clearly engaged in gender and racial discrimination. And to top it off, that woman turned out to be the company owner and an ICAO inspector. She set me up, Derek said. It was a trap. Maybe, Kellerman said. But you fell into it. Derek, even if we argue they set you up, the evidence is overwhelming. You endangered passengers. That's a federal offense. The FAA will suspend your license. Probably permanently. Derek's hand was shaking. How about suing her? Defamation? Wrongful termination? On what grounds? Kellerman asked. She documented everything. She followed protocol. She acted within her authority as both examiner and owner. We have no case. There has to be something, Derek pleaded. Kellerman sighed. The only thing we can do is get ahead of this. Issue a public apology. Admit you were wrong. Enroll in a voluntary rehabilitation program for bias training. And pray the FAA shows mercy. An apology. Derek's voice rose. Do I have to beg? Yes, Kellerman said flatly. Because if you don't, the FAA will make an example of you. And Derek, you're already trending on social media as the sexist pilot. Your face is a meme. Your career is over. Now the only question is, will you spend the rest of your life unemployed, or will you salvage some dignity? Derek hung up without responding. He opened Twitter. His name was trending. The most popular tweet had 890,000 likes. This is Captain Derek Carmichael. He tried to remove a black female pilot from his plane because of racism. He endangered passengers. He was fired. Don't be like Derek. Derek's LinkedIn photo. Not Derek the disgrace. The responses were brutal. Hope he never flies again. Imagine being that fragile. The airline is his. Schadenfreude is like a kiss from the bosses. Old white men in aviation should retire. Derek closed the app. He went to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and sat down at the table. The phone rang again. This time it was a number he recognized. Captain Jim Barlow, an old friend from his days working at Delta. Jim, Derek said, desperately seeking an ally. Derek, what happened? Jim's voice was cold. I saw the video. Please tell me it's not as bad as it looks. It's been taken out of context, Derek lied. He provoked me. Derek, stop. Jim cut him off. I listened to the CVR transcript. It's on the internet. You said he was hired for diversity. You didn't let him use the radios. When he told you to veer off course, you flew into a rage. There's no context to justify that. Derek was silent. I've known you for 20 years, Jim continued, and I've always thought you had a problem with women in the cockpit. But I told myself it was just old-fashioned thinking. I was wrong. You're done, Derek. And to be honest, you earned it. Jim hung up. Derek sat alone in the dark, staring at his whiskey glass. His entire identity, pilot, captain, authority had evaporated in a single day, and all because he had underestimated a woman in a NASA jacket. The next morning, Amara walked into the FAA Flight Standards District office in Denver. Inspector Michael Torres met her in the lobby, a stocky Hispanic man in his 50s with gray hair and a serious demeanor. Captain Williams, he said, shaking her hand. Thank you for coming. Follow me. He led her into a conference room where 2 other inspectors were seated, a woman named Sandra Chen and a younger man named David Park. A stenographer and recording equipment were also present. This is a sworn official statement, Torres said. Everything you say will be part of the official investigation. Do you understand? I understand, Amara said. For the next 3 hours, Amara recounted everything. The confrontation in Van Nuys, Derek refusing to fly with her, her interference with the radio communication, Derek's decision to fly in bad weather, Amara's intervention, the landing in Aspen. The investigators listened carefully, pausing occasionally to ask clarifying questions. Captain Williams, asked Sandra Chen, When you pulled out your headphone jack during the approach briefing. Absolutely, said Amara. Communication is crucial in a multi-crew environment. When he took out his headphones, he isolated himself. That's how accidents happen. And when you called the operations center to request a deviation from the route, asked David Park, was that within your authority? As an ICAO inspector, observing unsafe behavior, yes, said Amara. When I witness behavior that jeopardizes safety, I must intervene. Captain, I want to ask you a direct question. Did you board that plane with the intention of removing Captain Carmichael from duty? Amara looked him in the eye. No. I boarded hoping to prove I was wrong. I had heard rumors, but I wanted to see for myself. I gave him every opportunity to act professionally. He refused. Torres nodded. Okay. Final question. Do you believe Captain Carmichael is fit to hold an ATP license? Amara didn't hesitate. No. His decision-making is clouded by his biases. He cannot be trusted in a multi-crew environment. His willingness to put passengers at risk to protect his ego makes him a threat to aviation safety. The room was silent. Thank you, Captain Williams, Torres said. We have everything we need. We will announce our findings in 2 weeks. When Amara stood up to leave, Torres walked her to the door. Off the record again, he said quietly. Carmichael's lawyer is already framing this as a conspiracy. He'll fight his suspension. Let him, said Amara. The evidence speaks for itself. True, Torres said. But brace yourself for the media circus. This is going to get ugly. It already is, Amara said. She exited the building and got into the waiting car. Her phone vibrated with a new notification. It was an email from Derek Carmichael's lawyer. Subject: proposed settlement. Dear Miss Williams, my client, Captain Derek Carmichael, is prepared to drop the legal proceedings in exchange for a confidential settlement of $500,000 and a neutral business reference. This will allow both parties to move forward without further public scrutiny. Please respond. Amara read the email twice, then she forwarded it to her own lawyer with a single line. Response: no. He put lives at risk. No deal. She pressed send and leaned back in her chair. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about revenge. It was about responsibility. And Derek Carmichael was about to learn that some consequences couldn't be bought. That evening, Derek sat in his apartment, staring at his laptop. His lawyer had just called to relay Amara's response. She rejected the deal, Kellerman said. She's out for revenge, Derek. The FAA will rule against you. You'll lose your license. Then what do I do? Derek asked, his voice trembling. You disappear, Kellerman said plainly. Delete your social media accounts. Move to a quiet place. Accept that your flying career is over. And then you figure out what to do next. Derek hung up the phone. He opened his desk drawer and took out his pilot's license, a worn card he'd carried for 35 years. His hands trembled as he examined the card. Captain Derek Carmichael, ATP certificate. Type ratings: 777, 767, A320, G650, Global 750 FUM. This was his entire life, and now it was gone. He heard the doorbell ring. When he opened the door, he saw a young woman holding a camera. Captain Carmichael, she asked. I'm from Channel 7 News. Can we get a comment on the viral video? Derek slammed the door, but the doorbell kept ringing. More reporters, more cameras, trapped in his own apartment, a prisoner of his own actions. And somewhere in Denver, Amara Williams was preparing for the next phase, to make Apex Executive Aviation a model of what aviation should be: safe, professional, and free of the toxic culture that had protected men like Derek for so long. The war wasn't over, but Derek Carmichael had already lost. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. Apex Executive Aviation went from being a boutique charter company with a toxic underbelly to the most talked-about name in private aviation. The media attention surrounding the Derek Carmichael incident, while initially destructive, was ultimately like a fire that burned away decades of decay to make way for something better. Amara Williams stood in the newly renovated operations center at Nuys Airport, watching the sunrise cast golden and orange hues across the runway. 3 Bombardier Global 7.5ers stood in a neat row, their white paint gleaming. Each tail bore the new Apex logo, a stylized hawk with its wings spread wide. Her phone rang. It was a message from Chief Pilot Gary Sutton. Crew meeting starts in 10 minutes. Everyone is here, full complement. Amara smiled. She grabbed her coffee and walked toward the conference room. Inside, 23 pilots sat around a large oval table. Men and women, blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, young and old. Each had been personally interviewed by Amara. Each had passed not only technical evaluations but cultural evaluations as well. Derek Carmichael's was gone. The Old Boys Club was gone. Good morning, said Amara, stepping to the head of the table. Thank you all for coming. I know some of you flew in overnight to attend this meeting. Several pilots nodded and sipped their coffee. 6 months ago, Amara continued, this company was losing its talent. We were known as a company that tolerated discrimination. We had pilots who treated the crew like servants. We had customers who expected us to turn a blind eye to passengers' bad behavior. She paused for a moment. That ends today, officially. She opened a presentation on the screen behind her. All pilots at Apex will immediately undergo CRM training every 3 months. This is not symbolic training. It is training based on real scenarios, addressing issues such as bias, communication errors, and decision-making under stress. The pilots listened intently. Second, Amara continued, we will implement a zero-tolerance policy. Pilots who exhibit discriminatory behavior based on gender, race, religion, etc. will be immediately terminated. No warning, no second chances. A few pilots shifted uncomfortably. Good, they should be uncomfortable. Third, said Amara, we are launching a mentoring program. Each senior captain will be paired with a young pilot. We will actively recruit from underrepresented groups such as women, people of color, and veterans, and we will ensure they receive the support they need to succeed. She scanned the room. Any questions? A hand went up. It was Captain Mike Daniels, a 50-year-old former Air Force pilot. Captain Williams, what happened to Carmichael? I've heard rumors, but no one knows for sure. Amara nodded. She had expected this question. 2 weeks ago, the FAA made its final decision. Captain Carmichael's ATP license was revoked permanently. He is also barred from reapplying for at least 10 years. In addition, a lawsuit was filed by Miss Ashford for negligent conduct. His career in aviation is effectively over. The room was silent. I'm not happy about this, Amara said quietly. I gave him every opportunity to act professionally. He chose not to, and now he's facing the consequences of his choices. Another hand went up. Captain Lisa Tran, 34, a former Navy helicopter pilot. What about the media? Are they still following you? Amara smiled. Yes, they were, but I turned it into something positive. I gave interviews to Aviation Week, Forbes, and 60 Minutes. I used that platform to talk about bias in aviation, the importance of CRM, and why diversity makes us safer, not weaker. She opened another slide showing press clippings. Forbes, Captain Amara Williams, how she's revolutionizing private aviation. Aviation Week, the Carmichael incident, an example of crew resource management failure. 60 Minutes, overcoming obstacles, an F-22 pilot who bought an airline to change its culture. The interest was huge, Amara admitted. But it also brought us customers, good customers, people who want to fly with a company that prioritizes safety and professionalism over ego. She moved to the next slide and showed the financial data. Revenue, 67% increase, customer loyalty, 94%, employee satisfaction, 89%, safety incidents, 0. We're not just surviving, Amara said. We're thriving, because we did the right thing. The pilots began to applaud. The applause started slowly, then grew louder, until finally the entire room was on its feet, cheering. Amara felt a lump in her throat. She had never wanted recognition. She just wanted to fly planes and run a good company. But this felt like approval. Okay, she said, waving her hand to calm them down. Get back to work. We have flights to fly. As the pilots exited, Gary approached her. You know, Gary said, I was skeptical when you bought this company. I thought you were too young and idealistic. I thought the old guard would tear you apart and spit you out. Well now, Amara asked, now I think you're the best thing that's happened to this industry, Gary said. You didn't just save Apex. You set a standard. Other companies are watching you. They're copying your policies. You started a movement. Amara looked out the window at the plane. I just wanted to fly, Gary. That's all I wanted. You're doing more than flying, Gary said. You're leading. That afternoon, Amara received an unexpected visitor. Victoria Ashford walked into her office unannounced, wearing Lululemon clothes and holding a green juice. She looked relaxed, confident, and completely at home. Victoria, Amara said in surprise. I didn't know you were in town. I wasn't, Victoria said, sitting down uninvited. I came here specifically to see you. I have an offer. I'm listening, Amara said. Victoria pulled out her iPad. My VC firm invests in disruptive companies, companies that challenge the status quo. And Captain Williams, you are the definition of disruptive. She flipped through her iPad, showing a presentation. Apex Executive Aviation, Series A funding proposal. Valuation, $450 million. Investment, $75 million. Amara looked at the numbers. You want to invest in Apex? I want to help you grow, Victoria said. You've proven the model works. Now let's scale it nationally. We'll buy more planes, hire more pilots, franchise the training program. We'll make Apex the gold standard in private aviation. Amara leaned back in her chair. That's very ambitious. You brought down a racist pilot at 28,000 feet and went viral, Victoria said. Being ambitious is your brand, Amara laughed. I'll think about it. Don't think about it too long, Victoria said, standing up. I'm not the only venture capitalist who's noticed you, but I was there when it happened. I saw you in action. I want to be part of what you're building." She left the iPad on the table. "Call me." As Victoria walked out, Amara studied the offer. A $450 million valuation. 6 months ago, she had paid $180 million for a struggling company. Now it was worth more than double that. She closed the iPad and looked out the window again. Her phone vibrated. A new email had arrived. From Derek Carmichael. Subject: "I'm sorry." Amara hesitated. Then she opened the email. "Captain Williams, I know you have no reason to read this. You probably hate me. But I need to say this, even if you don't respond. I was wrong. About everything. About you. About aviation. About what it means to be a captain. For 35 years I thought my experience made me untouchable. I thought my resume gave me the right to treat people however I wanted. I was arrogant, prejudiced, and dangerous. You were right to ground me. You were right to fire me. You were right about everything. I spent the last 6 months in therapy. I tried to overcome my issues. I tried to understand why I was that kind of person. It doesn't excuse what I did. But I'm trying to be better. I will never fly again. I accept that. But I wanted you to know that you changed me. You made me see myself clearly. I am grateful to you for that. I'm not expecting forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted to say thank you. Derek." Amara read the email 3 times. She felt nothing. She wasn't satisfied. She wasn't angry. She just quietly accepted that some people, when completely broken, can become less toxic. She didn't reply. She archived the email and moved on. Because Derek Carmichael's salvation wasn't his responsibility. His responsibility was the pilots he employed, the passengers he flew, and the industry he was trying to change. That evening, Amara went to a small community center in Compton, an hour south of Van Nuys. He wore jeans and an old NASA flight jacket, the jacket he wore the day he met Derek. At the community center, 30 young people sat on folding chairs, their eyes wide with curiosity. This was the Apex Aviation Scholarship Program, an initiative Amara had started to bring children from underserved communities into aviation. She personally funded the scholarships for flight training, mentorship, and summer internships. "Good evening," said Amara, standing at the front of the room. "My name is Captain Amara Williams, and I'm here to tell you that you can fly." For the next hour, she talked about her own journey, growing up in Baltimore, joining the Air Force, flying F-22s, her experiences with discrimination, buying an airline, fighting back. The children listened in awe. "Aviation isn't just for rich white men," Amara said. "It's for anyone with skill, determination, and a dream. And if you're willing to work for it, I'm willing to help you get there." The children raised their hands. Questions poured out. "How much does flight school cost? Do you still fly? What was it like to fire that racist captain?" Amara laughed. "The last one? It was awful and necessary. But most of the time, I was just doing my job." She pointed to a young black girl in the front row, with braided hair and bright eyes, perhaps 16 years old. "You," Amara said. "What's your name?" "Janelle," the girl said. "Janelle, do you want to fly?" "More than anything," Janelle said, her voice firm. "Then you will," Amara said. "Because I won't let anyone tell you you don't belong in the cockpit. Not teachers, not instructors, not captains, no one." She pulled a business card from her pocket and handed it to Janelle. "This is my direct number. Call me when you're ready for flight school. I'll make sure you get there." Janelle's eyes welled up as she looked at the card. "Thank you." Amara shook her head. "Don't thank me, just prove them wrong." That night, as she left the community center, Amara felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Not just for herself, but for the next generation. For all the Janelles in the world who deserved the opportunities she was fighting for. She got into her car and headed toward Van Nuys. The city lights of Los Angeles stretched out on the horizon like a galaxy of possibilities. Her phone vibrated. A message from Gary. "Tomorrow's schedule is out. You're flying. Van Nuys to Miami. G7500. The client specifically requested you. Guess you're famous now." Amara smiled. She had spent the last 6 months building a company, fighting, and rewriting the rules. But tomorrow, she would do what she loved most: fly. She entered the Apex hangar, where 3 Global 7500 jets awaited her. She walked toward the nearest one and ran her hand along its fuselage. This wasn't just a plane. It was a statement that the old ways were over, that competence mattered more than color, that professionalism transcended prejudice. Derek Carmichael had tried to keep her out of the cockpit. Now the cockpit belonged to her, to the company, to the future, and she was just getting started. 10 years later, Amara stood on stage in front of 5,000 people at the Women in Aviation International Conference. She was now 42. A few gray strands in her hair, but her eyes still burned with the same fire. "When I bought Apex Executive Aviation," she said into the microphone, "people told me I was crazy. They said a black woman couldn't run an airline. They said I was too young, too inexperienced, and too idealistic." She smiled. They were wrong. The audience erupted in applause. Today, Apex operates in 12 countries. We employ 340 pilots, and 62% of them are women or people of color. We have zero tolerance for discrimination. And we haven't had a single safety incident in 10 years. More applause. But what I'm most proud of? Amara said. The Apex Aviation Scholarship Program has sent 847 children to flight school. Children who were told they didn't belong. Children who were told the cockpit wasn't for them. She pointed to Janelle, who was sitting in the front row. Janelle is now 26 and was wearing a pilot's uniform with 3 gold stripes. First officer. This is Janelle Martinez, Amara said. 10 years ago she was a kid in Compton who dreamed of flying. Now she's the first officer in our fleet, and she's not alone. 47 of our pilots graduated from this program. The audience stood and applauded. When people ask me how we changed aviation, Amara said, I tell them this: we didn't lower the standards, we raised them. We demanded competence, we demanded professionalism, and we refused to accept that prejudice was part of the culture. She looked out at the crowd. Pilots, engineers, managers, students. Derek Carmichael thought he could keep me out of the cockpit because of my appearance. He was wrong, and every day we prove him wrong again. He smiled. The sky isn't just for people with a certain look. The sky is for anyone brave enough to reach it. The applause was deafening, and in a small apartment in Arizona, Derek Carmichael was watching the speech on YouTube. He was now 68 years old. He worked in a hardware store. He had never remarried. He had never flown again. But as he watched Amara's speech, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: respect. She had defeated him not with cruelty, but with competence. She had taken everything he had tried to deny her and built an empire. He closed his laptop and walked to the window. Outside, contrails stretched across the Arizona sky. He had spent 35 years flying, and one day, in a moment of pride and prejudice, he had lost everything. He didn't regret losing his career. He regretted not seeing Amara Williams for who she was. She was a better pilot than Derek had ever been. And as the sun set over the desert, Derek Carmichael finally understood the lesson Amara had been trying to teach him. The cockpit belongs to no one. It belongs to those who deserve it.